Taoiseach, how much longer is the international community going to sit back and watch an impending genocide in Gaza? How many innocent civilians have to die? How many children have to be butchered? How many hospitals have to be destroyed? How many residential buildings flattened? How many schools decimated? How many farms devastated? How much slaughter and indiscriminate destruction can Western leaders stomach? More than 15,000 people have now been massacred in Gaza, including at least 6,000 children. Will 5,000 more Palestinian lives satisfy Israel's desire to seek revenge? 10,000? 20,000? Or is there any number of Palestinian lives lost that is deemed unacceptable? Taoiseach, nearly 2 months ago, Israel gave more than 1 million people just 24 hours to leave northern Gaza. And then they destroyed everything in the north. Hospitals, schools, apartment buildings, even refuge camps. Now, after a brief 7-day ceasefire, they have resumed their slaughter. Except this time, their focus is in the south, where more than 1 million displaced people were told to seek shelter. The depths of the depravity being unleashed in Gaza is unprecedented in its scale and in its brutality. Having told millions of civilians to flee to the south, Israel has now divided Gaza into a grid system of 600 blocks. Every day it drops flyers in Gaza telling civilians which grids are about to be blown off the face of the earth. However, the information can only be accessed through a QR code or social media posts. Gaza has been reduced to rubble. Its communication systems are in tatters. How many people have smartphones or internet connections to check if they're about to be blown to bits? This level of calculated and premeditated barbarism is disgusting. The fact that many Western leaders are watching this and still refusing to directly criticise Israel is despicable. What will it take for the international community to act? Or are Israel free to unleash whatever hell they like on more than 2 million people? Already, civilians in Gaza have been murdered, mutilated, displaced, starved and brutalised. They've all been denied all of the protections they are supposed to have under international humanitarian law. Taoiseach, the Irish government's words of condemnation has been stronger than most EU countries. But words are not enough. It is long past time for sanctions to be imposed on Israel. Taoiseach, it's now 3 weeks since you told me you get legal advice on whether Israel is in breach of the human rights clause in the EU-Israel trade agreement. Have you done that? And the next EU Council meeting is next Thursday. Will you be recommending sanctions on Israel at that meeting?
Thank you, Deputy Kearns. Taoiseach.
Thanks, Deputy. I share your horror about what's continuing to unfold in Gaza, and I don't think anyone can find the current situation to be anything more than unbearable, quite frankly, to see thousands of people being killed and thousands of children losing their lives. And while Israel has the right to defend itself, the actions that they've taken, in my view and that of the government, are disproportionate and will ultimately be counterproductive because we know from history that when people are treated in that way, it strengthens their resolve. And I think, as the Americans have said in recent days, Israel might achieve a military victory, but it's very likely to be a strategic defeat in terms of their own long-term security. And I was glad to hear the American authorities using that language and putting across that message. In terms of the questions that you asked, Deputy, in relation to Israel's actions in Gaza and the international community, I don't speak for Israel, and I don't speak for the international community either. I can only speak for the Irish government, and our position is very clear that there should be a new ceasefire. That ceasefire should be an extended one, if not a permanent one, and it should be observed by all sides, not just by Israel, but also by Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the Palestinian militant groups that are also committing terrible actions and have done so. We don't have the legal advice back yet, Deputy. I have asked for that, but I don't have it back yet. I hope to have it back soon. And just in relation to sanctions, I can only say what I've said before. Sanctions are only effective when they're done on a multilateral basis. I don't believe it would be the right thing for Ireland to engage in imposing unilateral sanctions. There would be a response. There would almost certainly be retaliation, not just Israel, perhaps from others. That would create problems for us and disadvantages for our citizens and would not be effective in changing the mind of the Israeli government. And I think you know that as well as I do. Sanctions can only be effective if they're done on a multilateral basis. And we are one of the countries that is listened to at an international basis. Attended COP in Dubai in the last couple of days. I had a chance to speak to a lot of countries from the Arab world, from the Global South. They recognise the position that Ireland is taking as one of leadership within the European Union, that we're not applying double standards in the way that some countries are. But if we go out on a limb and take unilateral actions, we'll be listened to less. It might make us feel better, but it won't do any good for the Palestinian people.
Deputy Kearns.
You said from the EU-Israel trade agreement 3 weeks ago. Where's the urgency when a child is dying every 10 minutes in Gaza? People there can't wait any longer. Whole families, generations of people have been wiped off the face of the earth. People don't have enough food and water. They've nowhere to flee from the bombs. Most of the hospitals aren't functional anymore. And we're watching it happen without doing anything meaningful to try and stop them. Absolutely zero pressure is being applied to Israel. Netanyahu has been clear that the killing will continue until they say Hamas has been destroyed. But how will they measure that? We know their intelligence isn't reliable, and we know they engage in lies and misinformation to cover up their human rights abuses. Israel has to face consequences. Ireland must advocate for that at an EU level. So going out on a limb and introducing the EU sanctions, I recognise is something you can do. I'm asking, will you push for that at an EU level at the next meeting on Thursday to try and get that unilateral response like we did with the war in Ukraine, to encourage the rest of the community in Europe to take those strong actions? Because Taoiseach, I understand your position and I agree with it, but the position of only having words of condemnation is what I can't understand. We can do more to try and save lives, and you're not doing it. We need actions to match those words. Where is the urgency?
Taoiseach, please.
Thanks, Deputy. There's a lot that we're doing as a country on an international stage. And both the Taoiseach and I have been very active on this issue. And when I met people from all over the world in Dubai in the last couple of days, from the Arab world and from the Global South in particular, they were very appreciative and thankful of the Irish position, the position that we've been taking, which is not one of double standards. And that's something we're going to continue. We've done a lot of work to help our citizens to get out of Gaza. We've done a lot of work to make sure that humanitarian aid could get into Gaza, and we'll continue on that work. But Deputy, I do take exception to the idea that there's something the Irish government isn't doing that would stop the killing in Gaza. I don't think that's a fair comment, if that's what you meant. You know, it's almost trying to blame the Irish government and the Irish people for the actions of Israel. And, well, if that's not what you're trying to imply, well, then thank you for that clarification.
Thank you very much.